This is an oral history interview conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. This is Rachel Mumford and Tika Rank, and we are interviewing Mr. Patskanick. So, how did you end up on Cape Cod?
While I was in the military, back in the early 70s, a officer owned a place in Eastham, and he came into my shop and said, "My regular tenants aren't going to be there for 2 weeks. If you know anybody that wants to rent a place in Eastham on Cape Cod, let me know." And that year earlier, my brother had said to me, who lives in New Jersey, "If you ever know about anything at Cape Cod, let me know, because my family never been there, and I'd like to go." So I said to him, "We can take a week of it," because in the military, when I started in 1963, we were making $94 a month. It was not yet a voluntary, it was still a draft. So that meant that you didn't get paid for anything. It was called mad money. You got paid twice a week, half of the $94 on the 15th and the other half on the 1st. And so we came up together, and that was the first time I came here, and I didn't know why I liked it so much. So my brother came with me the following 4 years, and then he stopped and his family went somewhere else, but I never stopped. I kept on coming here. And I learned all about the different parts of Eastham, and I couldn't figure out why I liked coming to the Cape Cod. I didn't realize the reason why until the second year I retired, and I was living here year-round. And that was because it was the only place I had ever been where there was a constant. It was something that was never changing. And the constant was the ocean beating against the shore. Every place else you go, things change. Buildings come down, new roads go in, trees come down. Things change all the time. But in the National Seashore, there was the constant of the ocean. No new buildings going up. And it sort of did things positive to my brain. And that's why I knew when I retired I was coming here. Because I liked it for various reasons, but that was one of them. Because there is a constant here in Eastham.
Okay, back to your early life. What did you like to do growing up?
What did I like to do? Well, in high school, I was in a couple of class plays, and I was in the boys' course and the selective course, and I rode a bicycle. I mean, it was a big bike, but I rode a bike a lot, and that sort of stayed with me my whole life. The last 3 years I was in the military, I would use my bicycle commuting back and forth to the military installations instead of my automobile. I was doing 6,000 miles a year on a bike. That's why I'm still in the physical condition I am in, because on the bike it kept your metabolic rate doing 90 miles an hour, burning up all these excess calories you were dining on, and you stayed in good repair. Plus you had to stay in good physical repair to pass the physicals, because if you didn't pass the physicals, you got thrown out. No talking about, no, well, I can shoot. No, you do it or you're out. And that's one other thing I liked about the military. No excuses.
What inspired you to join the military?
Well, I was class of 63, graduating high school, and I was accepted to Rutgers University. My brother was 4 years my senior, so he was graduating in 63 from Rutgers. And so I went up to orientation day. We sat down in a giant room. There were 1,450 of us sitting there. And this guy got up on the stage and said, "Listen, I know it's a little crowded right now. You're the class of 67. He said, "But after the first semester, this class is going to be cut down to 425. And I said to myself, I don't want to compete. I want to learn. What am I going to do? Compete against all these other guys and get thrown out and then become 1A eligible for the draft and go into the Army? I said, not for me. I am not going to do that. So I said, I'm going to join the Air Force, and I'm going to get an education. I'm not going to risk this what I thought going to college they were going to teach you. But no, now you got to compete still. I was lucky I got accepted. So that's one of the main reasons I didn't go to college. I went into the Air Force, and it was the best thing I ever did. I'll tell you about why later.
Could you describe your education for us?
Well, when I started, I went through 12th grade in public education in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, and I took a lot of math courses, trigonometry, algebra 1 and 2, trigonometry, geometry. Best thing that I ever did because it helped me in electronics tremendously. Then I joined the military, and after basic training, I went to a technical school for 32 weeks and learned about automatic pilot systems. Besides that, I also, in the military, went to NDT school, which is non-destructive testing. It was very sophisticated, very high up. There were only 2 military people in with 12 nuclear engineers in San Diego, California, at Convair Aircraft Corporation School for Non-Destructive Testing. And I learned things I never knew. It wasn't until that time that I knew what I would have gone to college for if I had gone. And back there, we're talking 1971, the thing that fascinated me the most was ultrasonics. And ultrasonics started as a test by the hog buyers in the Chicago stockyards so they could figure out how much of the weight of the hog they were buying was fat and how much was meat. So they said some engineers, figure something out. And that's when they came up with the probes and the little screens, and they got the hogs and they put some grease on their side and they put the probe on it, and they got the spikes on the screen, and they could see 3/4 inch fat, 1 inch fat, so they knew how much money they were spending for real meat or waste. But anyhow, so that's one course I went to, the non-destructive test. And then I just kept on getting to more sophisticated electronics, because I started in 1963 with vacuum tubes and wires and saw the change over the 30 years of how sophisticated electronics had gotten.
How did your family feel about you joining the Air Force?
Well, my mom, who is still alive at 99, and I have her living here on Cape Cod at Brewster Place, she had 4 brothers, 1 husband, go into the military. And the day I left, she couldn't say nothing. She was sitting at the sink, washing dishes, almost crying. But they knew I had to go. It was my decision. I was not going to stay home and tolerate anymore. I was out of there. So they weren't happy. But then again, I had to make myself happy.
Could you describe your training for us?
Basic training was down in Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, and you've seen movies how guys go in and get their heads all shaved, basically, of all hair, and all their costumes are the same. The uniforms are exactly the same. That's to break down your individuality and then build you up as a team, because everything in the military is a team effort. No one person makes the aircraft fly. Everybody doing their jobs on the aircraft make the aircraft serviceable so that the pilot can get in and go and do his thing.
So you mentioned that your uniforms were all the same. Could you describe your uniform?
Well, back then they were olive drab, green, and they had pockets on them. And the back pocket had flaps, had buttons, of course. And the boots we had, they call them brogans, were black leather. And that was it. It wasn't fancy. It was basically, that's what we wore all the time. And it was very demanding. We started with a flight of 62 people. At the end of 6 weeks, there were 37 left. The other ones got washed out. Some of them got sent home. I mean, I saw guys have nervous breakdowns. I didn't know what to, because they couldn't handle the stress that we were put under. You got 8 hours of sleep a night, but 16 hours that you were awake, you were straight up. You were doing things. They had you going, let's say, a little crazy.
How old were you when you joined the Air Force?
18 years and 4 months. Because, like I said, I was going to go to college, but I didn't. And the best thing I could say is everything I did was correct for me, because I didn't waste any time after I got out of high school. I went immediately into the Air Force. 30 years later, I retired at 48, because they can't keep enlisted people longer than 30 years. And I never knew why. As I gotten closer and closer to that point, I finally figured it out. It's because you could not physically still do the things that were required of you on the flight ground.
Could you describe your living arrangements?
In the military,
Yes.
where I was at Texas, it was 4 guys to a room, upper and lower bunks. You had 1 drawer for your clothing, and 1 drawer lower than that for personal gear. A small locker, maybe 18 inches wide, where all your uniforms hung in proper order. Nothing was thrown in. Everything had to be absolutely correct, because they were teaching you to be ultra neat. Because if you work on an aircraft, you don't ever be a pig pen. Everything has to be picked up entirely.
Could you describe Vietnam for us?
I got in Vietnam. I took after I left California, we flew to the Philippines. The Philippines, I flew into the Nam in a old, crazy aircraft. It was a C-124 Globemaster, they called it. It was not fast, it was slow. The aircraft hit the ramp, dropped the tailgate, and the fragrance of the country and the high humidity was unbelievable. It took me 2 days to be able to function in that environment, because it was just too much. It was too intense. You constantly were sweating. At night, if you're lucky and you got to go to bed at night, you had to even put a sheet on top of you, because the temperature would drop to maybe 77, 76 degrees. And during the day, it was hot and humid.
How were you treated by your fellow soldiers?
We all treated each other the same. Everybody was the same. We were all doing the same thing there, and what we were doing was trying to adhere to the directives of the Commander-in-Chief. The Commander-in-Chief in the United States is the President. He deals with the 5 branches of the military. And unfortunately, they sometimes try to run the military. For instance, when we went over to the Nam and Kennedy was in office, the people in Washington, on his board there, tried to decide what they were going to do over there, how they were going to fight the war. That's why Vietnam didn't work. Administrative people, political people don't know. You look at Desert Storm 1. Desert Storm 1 was run by the first George Bush, the first Bush president. He realized when Saddam Hussein took over that oil export country right next to his, it wasn't going to work. He said to the Chief of Staff, Colin Powell, who was in charge of all 5 branches of the military, do it. He didn't tell him how to do it. He said, do it. 96 days later, it was over, because Colin Powell knew how to run a military operation. He was a student of it. He'd been it his whole life. That's why it was over in 96 days. We lost 156 people in that conflict. That was all. Because they knew what they were doing. Politicians, with the NAM, they had no idea what they were doing.
What was the best part of serving?
The best part of being, for the whole trip, the whole tour, 30 years, feeling as though you were, well, let's just say this, liberty isn't free. We have to maintain this style of living. You're sitting on a cushioned chair. In the NAM, there were no cushions. You sat on cement, you sat on a flight line, on rocks. We have things here that people don't know that have never been in the military. You don't know how much you have. You're warm, we're dry. I mean, it's just, so what was the best part of being in the military? Maintaining our standard of life here in this country. There's a saying I remember reading, I think it is, freedom has a flavor the protected never know. That's the truth, because unless you paid your dues and been there and see it, that's why when I raised my daughters, I told them, there's 3 things in life you need to be happy: to be warm, dry, and well fed. I said that means the roof don't leak, you're dry. Warm means you have clothes to wear, blankets to put on, and well fed means you got shower and a refrigerator. I said, I've seen people don't have that. You have to be thankful for what you have.
When you hear the word Vietnam, what comes to mind?
I'm glad I was there. I was there the 3rd year I was in the military. I looked at my first 4 years of the military like my first 4 years of college. My freshman year was basic training and technical school. My 2nd year, which would be my sophomore year, was kind of stupid for me because I was young and nobody ever talked to me. It's the year I got married. Had a child, 3 months old. I went to Nam, my 3rd year in the military, and that's where I saw and learned about things all around the world. I mean, things that other people had no idea about. And then I got shipped back stateside, my 4th year. So what was the question again? I want to make sure I answered it correctly.
When you hear the word Vietnam, what comes to mind?
It means I'm glad I went, and let's just say I am sorry that they eliminated the draft. The reason they did that was because mothers didn't want their sons to go into war. And there was a big, giant, chaotic thing in this country about no war. People don't realize, people that are professional military, the last thing they want is war. There was a president that used to say things like, speak softly, but carry a big stick. And the military is the big stick. It is the threat of people that don't do the right things in life. Okay? So, the people that never been in the military, well, when they stopped the draft, that was when the late 60s, when all the drug paraphernalia became a big thing. Everybody's doing drugs because nobody had to go down and take a physical anymore and get rated for the draft, 4A, 1B, and all this, because you weren't going to give blood, you weren't going to get tested. So that's when the drug scene went crazy, in the late 60s and 70s. And the big thing about the elimination of the draft is the high school graduate lad, boy, male of the species, did not have to make a decision what they were going to do with the rest of their life, whether they were going to go to college or to trade school they didn't have to make a decision. They went home and slept in the basement in mom's place because mom wasn't going to throw him out. It's my son. It's okay. Huh? So the positive thing about the military was you learned, 1, factory discipline, to respect your elders, to be on time. When you went to a job, to employment, you're on time person. And to any trade you want to do, even now in this day and age, anybody who says we got to give more money for kids to go to college, no. Let them go into the military. Anything they want to do, they can go into and learn for free. They'll get paid. Big money now, I understand. More than my $94 a month. Okay.
Could you describe your most vivid memory for us?
Of 30 years?
Yes.
One of the most positive things, when I went to take Noriega out of Panama, we took a bus to go from South America across the Panama Canal. And there we were, high up, the Bridge of the Americas. I remember that was the name of it. The view was shocking. It was, I'd never been that high in a ground vehicle, and it was just amazing. It was incredible to see that. That was the most visually exciting thing I ever saw. I had rounds coming in at us at some times, but that was just noise. We didn't see. But we were all in Benoit in '66, and everything was going smooth, and all of a sudden it was a sound, a crack that sounded like an aircraft splitting apart in the sky. And what it was, in Saigon, which was 19 miles south of us, they had hit an ammo dump. And that noise was that loud where we were all the way up, that far away. That was exciting, to say the least. The most positive, when I was in Da Nang, it was in '66. July 4th, I was working down in Delta Section on an aircraft. I had to check out this system, and I had to get some parts. I get down, I was checking it out, and some old, I always only had 3 stripes. Some five-stripe sergeant came over and said, "Hey." So I came down, I shut the systems off, I came down. He said, "Come on, man." He drugged me over, and they had 55-gallon drums that they had cut in half. And they put grates on top of them, and they put wood inside, and they had fresh steaks. Don't ask me where they got them. I have no idea. They had fresh steaks. So he gave me a steak sandwich in one hand and a beer in the other hand, and I stood there, and I looked in the distance, and there was an AC-47. A C-47 was the aircraft that they used long before my time, when they flew the Berlin airlift, when they took all the supplies into Berlin when it was all quarantined off. Well, they then took them later on and used them for transports, and then they took and they put 3 50-millimeter Gatling guns in the sides of the aircraft, and the sight system for it was on this side of the pilot, so he could aim down where he wanted to fire these Gatling guns, tilt the aircraft over, and press a trigger, and they would fire. And every 8th round out of the Gatling gun was a tracer. It was red. So here I am standing, almost dark, down there in Fox section with a beer in one hand and a steak sandwich in the other, and there's my 4th of July fireworks. It was the AC-47 firing down, and I says, only to an American would he see something like this and know what it is. And it was a celebration of the 4th.
What was the food like while you were in the military?
When I was in Da Nang, the food was reconstituted. They didn't have proper refrigeration. The milk was evaporated milk with water poured into it. Nobody drank the milk. Eggs were the same thing, reconstituted eggs. Not good. But if the supply ship came in, everybody would yell, "Hey, the supply ship's in." So that means the next 3 meals at the chow hall, whatever they were, was going to be fresh food. So everybody would go. But then it was back to the same old stuff. We would go downtown to Rosie's Day and Night Club, which was located right on the river, and they would have water buffalo steaks, and they would have string beans that they grew in their garden on a grill, fried on a grill with fish oil, and potatoes sliced and on the grill. It was magnificent food. Magnificent. So, but other than that, and then later on, as time went on, the meals got better and better, of course, because they changed the whole program. They were paying big money now for people to come in, and the guys were going to various schools to learn to be chefs and the such, and they were good. They were very good. But when I first went in, not good.
What was your hardest decision?
Well, the first time I was going to get out, we were suffering under a unemployment situation in the States. That was in '67. So I says, I can't get out because I don't have a college degree. I don't have anything to offer for employment, so I better stay in for another 4. So I did. And then, because I sense things in people, I suddenly realized after one tour, we had what they call TDYs, temporary duty tours, where we would leave for maybe a week, 10 days, and come back. Just the guys. Families and everything would stay. We'd go, come back. I came back from one of those tours, and I looked at my wife, and I knew she hadn't adhered to the rules of marriage. I could sense it. So I just had to wait about 2 weeks before I could gather my intelligence together and gave her her walking papers. Out. I would say the military does not promote family life. It is not good for family life. I was married one time, 6.5 years, never got married again. Because I figured, what am I going to do if I get married again? Well, I got what I wanted from being married. I got 2 kids. Now I got 4 grandchildren, so I'm happy. I mean, simple pleasures for simple minds, I always say, and I'm simple Simon. There's not a lot in life. I mean, I've got more than I ever thought I would have for a high school graduate. I've come a long way. So the hardest part of the military is the family life. It's very demanding.
What were the rules of marriage that you spoke of?
Basically, you will be only intimate with one person, the person you married. Especially then, it was different than now. When we were over to the Nam, they said, listen, you're going over here to this country, you're going to be in a hotter environment. There are some diseases you can get from the ladies that there are no cures for. We will send you from here to Hawaii to see if it will clear up. And then you're going to have to explain to your relatives why you're in Hawaii instead of in the Nam. I didn't run around. If I was married, that was it. To me, you don't do that. So that's what I said. She didn't play the game. But again, we were ignorant, young, too young to do what we did, but we did it anyhow. Then I had to raise my 2 children myself because she was not of a stable mind. It's a little trick, raising 2 girls, but I raised them like little boys because I was never a little girl. They know how to use tools. They know how to do everything because a guy raised them.
What was your happiest moment?
Of my whole life or just in the military?
Anything that you'd like to answer.
The happiest moment in my life. And I was a guy. Now, guys don't get excited about babies. 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 And when you have your own children, it's like an anchor on your shoulders. You got responsibility. My happiest, most exciting thing was when I had my first granddaughter. And I went to the hospital and I held this tot and I said, hey, you're an all right troop, Can you hold that for a minute? I'll show you pictures. I have pictures. I don't know if you can let that run, but I'll show you, And they both did excellently because as a grandfather, I told them a long time ago, if I ever ask you a question and you don't want to answer it, all you have to say is pass. I said, I'm not ever interrogating you. I said, I'm communicating with you. That is the oldest granddaughter when she was about, I would say, 9 months old. And my mom back there many years ago. She's 26 now.
Do you mind showing that to the camera?
Oh, This is the second granddaughter. 2 years later, she went to college for 1 year. Is this where you want it?
Yes.
She went to college for 1 year and said, not for me. And I said to her, Megan, you don't want to go to college? Don't. I said, I didn't go to college. You don't have to go to college. She went and took a 550-hour course for hair, being a hairstylist in Connecticut, and she's happy as a pig in dew. She's working. She's very successful. And this is a funny one. I showed you those. This is the family portraits.
Would you like to show that to the camera?
I see everybody says, what the heck? That's a family portrait. But nobody knows what it is. Do you have any idea what it is?
It looks like money. Some sort of
Yes. It's a $2 bill, the back of a $2 bill. Because the rule, never carry more money than you can afford to lose. I carry $39. It's all the most I ever, yes, I got charge card, but cash, $39, always. Okay, so the happiest moment was when I held my first grandchild.
What was your darkest moment?
Darkest moment. The exciting moment was when I heard that loud explosion, but that wasn't dark, that was just stimulating dark, Darkest moment. I guess because I'm a guy and I expect things. I expect the worst, not the worst, I accept it. Like somebody says to me, one of the big things older people do, they say, hey, you hear so-and-so died? And I say to myself, I don't say it out loud because people go crazy. I said to myself, what did he do to keep himself going? What did he do to keep himself healthy? I do things to keep myself looking like this. Every morning I get on a treadmill and I walk 4 miles, and I don't walk slow. I do it in under 55 minutes because that's the cadence I used to spin the pedals on the bicycle. I walk with that same rate of speed. And that's why my blood pressure, I heard on the news the other day, they said, listen, we're going to drop the proper blood pressure from 140 to 120. I said, 120? My blood pressure is 106/62 because I've always kept taking care of myself. Bicycling heavily, and now the treadmill up here, and I bicycle and walk up here. That's why I walked here tonight. I don't drive. My vehicle is in its starting January 31st, it will be starting its 16th year. It's only got 72,000 miles because I walk. The last one expired at 17 years and 10 months because a computer went that they couldn't get me a new one for. So I had to get rid of it.
What were you the most sad to leave behind?
Well, because I see people as often as I want to, and I don't want to be overly involved in youth in my granddaughters' lives, I know where they are, and they know where I am. And I see them twice a year. They come out for the 4th Monday of every June because I take them and their dad and their stepson, and we go out on the luau out of Rock Harbor striper fishing with John Shaplix. He built my house here. So, the most saddest thing, I was not sad to get out of the military. I was glad I got out. It was changing. The reason I was very glad I got out of the military, because the draft dodger, Bill Clinton, was commander-in-chief at the time. And if you never heard the whole story about how he was a draft dodger, he was not an honorable man. He did worse things for that position than the presidency than anybody ever before him had done. But he went down the first year he was in, thinking he was going to be a real wonderful guy and go down to the Vietnam Wall, the monument, the Vietnam Wall to talk to the guys. He got there, one guy said, "Attention, everybody that was there, all the guys that were there that normally went to the wall, snapped to attention," and he said, "About face." They gave him their back because he was not a good man in many aspects. The biggest thing he was a draft dodger.
Did you ever meet any presidents?
No.
If you could go back in time, would you still enlist?
For me, it was correct. Yes, I've been all around the world. I've been all around the United States. I've seen things and done things other people don't fathom. They don't know. My mind has been open to the world and everything else, like I told you, about how good we have it in this country. I mean, I wouldn't push it on anybody. And even though I say that, my youngest daughter, after a year and a half of junior college, said to me, "Dad, I think I want to join the military." So I just gritted my teeth. She said, "It's going to give me a sense of belonging." In other words, she was independent like me. I don't need anybody around me. That's one of the reasons I liked riding the bike as much as I did. First, it was quiet. Being on a flight line for 30 years around noisy aircraft was very demanding on your head. So everything I did away from the flight line and the aircraft was silent. My motorcycle was a bicycle. My speedboat was a canoe. My snowmobile was cross-country skis. And I walked a lot. So I hope that answered the question. I forgot what the question was.
That did answer the question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give us if we told you that we wanted to join the Air Force?
I would say that you are making a wise decision and you're not going to waste any of your life. You'll take what they call the Air Force qualification exams to make sure you could go into the field that you have the mental capability to go into, and you're going to get paid more bucks than I ever got paid. I mean, they're paying a lot of bucks now, thousands, more than $80, $94 a month. I would say it would be wise. You would not waste your time. You will get, like I say, you'll be paid to get an education and become very proficient in your chosen field. And you're going to travel. That's the biggest thing. You're going to go places and see things that other people don't have any idea. I went to one high school class reunion, my 40th. I was already retired for 10 years. I went to that 40th class. Everybody who had never left the town any distance to go to college, or they just stayed there, were happy there. Everybody who had left, joined the military or went far distant college, never went back because they saw there was a different way of life besides that hometown. So I would say do it. Do it in a minute. You won't be sorry. You don't have to do it for the rest of your life, but you go for one tour of 4 years and you will see things and go places, and it's very, very positive.
Before we wrap things up, is there any other story that you'd like to tell us?
Anything else? The only thing I could say is, in the military, you can do as good as you are driven to do. There are more benefits now than there ever was. It's easy to do things right in the military because there's just simple rules. The people that got thrown out, the people that got dishonorably discharged, they would have gotten in trouble in the civilian world. It's a simple life. It's positive. It's the difference between right and wrong. You know the difference between right and wrong right now. You wouldn't have any problems. But the thing is, you have to remember, when you go in initially, they are going to take you and eliminate your individuality. They are going to put you through basic training, 6 weeks of mental agony. but I made it. If I can make it, anybody can make it. That's what I say. It was well worth it for me. And I say, you get free medical, free dental, got a place to live, got 4 meals a day if I wanted them. I mean, but the biggest thing is the learning process. One of the things I had to do, one other thing to tell you, women can go a lot further now in the military than they used to be able to. Maybe you didn't hear about this because it was quite a few years ago, but there was one female pilot of a B-52 that carried nuclear weapons. She was a captain. She, like myself, when I was in the military and I was handling nuclear weapons, all your paperwork in the upper corner gets stamped with a stamp that says AFR 39.5. That's human reliability. So they watch you a little bit carefully because you're around nuclear weapons. The rule in the military is if you are an officer, you don't fraternize with enlisted. The lady was seeing an enlisted guy. I think he was a tech sergeant. Good repair and everything, but was not allowed. It's rules. Don't fraternize with. So she was called before her commander, and he said, Captain so-and-so, are you having a relationship with an enlisted man? And she said, no, sir. Immediately, you don't lie to a superior officer, especially when it's AFR 35.9 is on your paperwork. She said that, she was terminated. Thrown out of the military. Lost her rank and everything else. And everybody said, oh, it's because she was a woman. No, because she violated AFR 35.9. You don't do that. It's very simple life. If this jerk didn't get thrown out, I got out of boy, 30 years. It was interesting, but I understand that towards the end of it, I was not physically able to do the things I could do when I was younger, like load missiles on aircraft and do things of that nature, haul these heavy power units around on a flight line to hook them up to the aircraft so that we didn't have to run the aircraft engines and everything. So I would say it is a great life. It is exciting. You'll go places and do things you would never expect to do. But I would definitely say it's a positive thing. Okay, you can terminate. I got some show and tell here if you want to see show and tell.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Yeah, I'm glad to be able to assist you.